Phoebe. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and as you can see from the title of this video, what we're going to be doing this week or in this video is we are going to read all of the Hunger Games books. Now, I have read, in full disclosure, I have read the first 4 books, so I've read the main trilogy, and then I've read the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I have not yet read the Sunrise on the Reaping, because I knew, and which is part of why this video came about, that Hermie over at the book Hermit was going to be hosting this Hunger Games read-along format, and I decided, you know what, we're just going to wait for that, because it's going to mean that a lot of other people are going to be joining us. Some people are reading it for the first time, other people are also rereading it. I don't know how long it's been since I've read especially the main trilogy. I think it's close, like it's gotta be 5 years. I don't know when they came out, but it's been a while. So that's gonna be quite interesting, even though they look like they've been read hundreds of times. I promise you they haven't. I think something went on with the quality of this first trilogy. I don't know what happened. But this is kind of a good thing, because I decided that I'm going to be annotating this one. As you guys can see, I already did get a bit of a head start. The fact that these are looking like they're falling apart is actually a great thing, because I'm starting to annotate more and more. I'm using pencil right now, because I am planning on buying new editions of these books. Like if you look at these, they don't look like they're gonna, I don't know, hold up for a lot of time. So, and because I do actually like these books, I think they deserve a place on my shelf, and for that I want them to look nice and pretty. So if any of you know of any pretty covers or pretty versions of the Hunger Games, especially the first trilogy, let me know. Just a little bit of a disclaimer, I did not have any work done on my lips. I didn't get punched or anything like that. I just have a cold sore. Work has been pretty stressful. I have a week off now, which thank you. And I think when you come down from a really stressful period, my body has decided that it can do one of 2 things, which is either going to make me sick and make me stay in bed and force me to be in bed for a couple of days, or it's just going to give me a cold sore, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I would not want to be sick during my week off, but doing this kind of thing and having to shoot videos with a cold sore is also not really the funnest thing in the world, but we're just going to try and ignore it and not be self-conscious about it, and we're just going to do this. I forgot how very not YA this book feels. The older you get, especially I had this with the movies, the older you get, the more insane this feels. And sadly, the more realistic it feels, because especially during the state of this world right now and what's going on everywhere, the fact that this does not seem as far-fetched as I used to think when I was a teenager is very disturbing. So reading about this in the current climate is, I mean, they have mentioned that the fact that Sunrise on the Reaping came out this year is something that, or did it come out this year? I think so. The fact that it came out this year, Suzanne Collins only publishes a book when she has something to say. And I think that speaks volumes. If you haven't read these books, maybe that's a good thing to mention. If you haven't read these books, it's basically a dystopian world where it's based in America, and there has been a very, very big rebellion. We join, or we pick up after there's been a huge rebellion, and the best way that the government has found to deal with rebels and to keep everyone quiet is to host a Hunger Games every single year. Now, what are the Hunger Games? The Hunger Games basically means that there is a child, a female and a male child, from the ages of 12 to 18 that are picked from every district. Now, there's 12 districts, which is basically a reality game show to the people in the capital that has children, or these children are being sent there to fight to the death until there is one left, who will be crowned the victor. Now, we follow a girl named Katniss Everdeen, who is from District 12, which is, if you're going by numbers, the lowest number, and is also appearing to be the poorest of all of the districts. And it basically follows her journey throughout this first book. And like I mentioned, it's pretty dark. If you think about it in any capacity, sending children off to die is not okay. And the fact that everyone just has to go along with this is insane. I think in this book, we are on the 74th Hunger Games. So if you think about that there's been 73 years of this going on. 73 years of 24 kids being sent, at least, because there's special versions every 25. That's a lot of kids that have been sent to die. So I ended the stream at the sprints at chapter 15, which means that I'm perfectly halfway in. So we're just gonna finish this book, see how we feel about it around this time of my life, and I'll update you when I finished. And then we're just gonna keep going. I finished about an hour, 2 hours before we're going to be watching the first movie, which is great. It's been a ride to reread all of this. There's a few things that they did differently in the books than they did in the movies that I sort of forgot, but were coming back as I was reading along. I forgot how many different types of torture that the Capitol used against every single one of the tributes, which was not a fun thing to read about. I don't know, I think you can see, even as it's happening, the PTSD that the whole games are creating and what is actually happening in Katniss's head. If you don't want to get spoiled, if you haven't read The Hunger Games, I guess you should probably skip to the timestamp that I'm going to be putting down below, down here, because I do want to talk a little bit about what's actually happened. There are a few things I forgot. The whole part about the tributes, the dead tributes being incorporated in the wolf-like, dog-like mutts at the end. Why? Why was that necessary? Especially when they talk about Rue being back. That is psychological warfare. I made a few notes here and there about the tracker jackers, why did you invent those? What was the thing that made you think of that? A lot of these things exist because cruel people were giving the power and the free-for-all to make them, like the tracker jackers, the mutts that came on at the end. I mean, the fact that they had to listen to Cato slowly die over the course of an entire night? No, that is not YA. Reading about war, which is basically what this is, and reading about children dying in the most horrendous ways, reading about children becoming murderers, like, that is so psychologically not okay, in my opinion. I mean, and then the whole final thing, I do love the fact that that Suzanne Collins doesn't really focus on the love story in this. The love story is, especially in this one, I mean, Katniss isn't really sure about Gale or what Gale is to her, which is fine. And then obviously Peeta comes along and sets up this whole star-crossed lovers situation, which is genius and shows why he is the more verbally clever of the two, I think. And then her having to sort of play along, and then at the end not knowing what is real, what is not, and him sort of being like, well, there was no pretending for me, all of this was real, I really do care about you, I really do love you, I've loved you for a while. And that whole thing only coming back towards the end, which is when she's actually confronted with what she did to him in the games. I like that it's not the main focus, to come back to my original point. Because I think which is why I think this book is so different, or these books are so different from a lot of other ones, because in a lot of books, the love story is the main point. And in this book, it feels like the love story is, or the beginning of one. I don't know if it's really, like, it almost feels like a secondary plot line in this. Like, it doesn't really matter what she feels about him at the end of this book. I mean, whether she actually loves him or she doesn't. Yes, there's going to be repercussions about it in the second and third book, but it doesn't really change the way that the book went or the way that the story went, because he tried to, from the very get-go, which is a through line, if you haven't read all of the other books, which is kind of a through line, I don't think that's really a spoiler, but it's a through line that he is always trying to protect her and keep her safe, and that's his main goal from the get-go. To come back to some of the more main plot lines without spoiling anything, is that it becomes very clear towards the end of this book that even when the games are done, the Hunger Games are done, the game isn't done. The game is not finished. The game does not stop. You are on this ride. And I think we forget about it because we do hear about other people who have won the games, which is Haymitch in this story that we mainly get to meet. And he gets dragged in every single year to sort of guide these tributes through the games and try and make them win. And I don't think it's that big of a spoiler and that big of a stretch to say that he has sort of lost hope and doesn't really want to do this anymore. He doesn't want to do this, but he's been dragged into this, and I mean, it's the first year that he feels like it could actually end up differently. The way I see it, finishing this book, is that there is truly no one who wins the games. No one wins. Everyone who is from the districts, I think even the winners, and even when you read about what Effie goes through, her arc, it's starting in this one. No one wins. Absolutely no one wins except for the president. Because there's no way that even when you win, you come out of this whole. I think Suzanne Collins made it more like even, I think they even pushed it to middle grade YA, is because it's important to read about what could happen if you don't pay attention and if you don't see what's going on in the world. Get to do it all again tomorrow because we're starting with the second Hunger Games book, which is my favorite movie out of all 4 of them. So I'm excited to watch that movie in the next week, and then, or next Sunday, I guess. I don't remember if it's my favorite book. So I guess that's going to be exciting to rediscover with this whole series. I say excited when, like, my whole spiel just now makes it very obvious that I don't really want to feel excited about this. But it's one of those books where you know you're reading a classic, and it might not give you all the warm and fuzzy feelings, but you know it's an important read, and you know it's like, it's a great book. It's great writing, and that is the part that I do enjoy, to read something that is of high value and that actually makes a difference when you read it, because it sets a few wheels spinning. Let's go. Let's start catching fire. Hermie is hosting their Hunger Games sprints. We are currently on our first one. I'm ready. My favorite movie, deciding if this is going to be my favorite book as well. I think, in my head, I've been thinking about this, and the way I think it's going to go is if we do a ranking, because I think I might want to do a ranking at the end of this video when it comes to the books. The movies I'm not going to talk about because I don't think that's fair, because Sunrise on the Reaping doesn't have a movie out yet. And I've mentioned before that Catching Fire is my favorite movie, so let's just not mess with that. But if we do kind of go off of movies, I think this is going to be 1. Hunger Games is going to be 2. Then Mockingjay, and then Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think. I'm not. I'm going to read all of them first, and then we'll come back to this when we end. But I think when it comes to Sunrise on the Reaping, from the reactions that I've seen without there being any spoilers in it, from the reactions I've seen, I think it might, not to have like recency bias or the fact that I'm going to be reading it for the first time, but I think we might be in danger here. I think Sunrise on the Reaping might trump this one, but we're going to have to see. And we're going to have to see by first starting this one. Okay, I just had to come inside and do a little bit of an update because I'm at page 75 and I've already teared up because of one simple line. If you've never read The Hunger Games, this is not going to mean anything to you. If you have, you'll know what I mean. But the line that made me go a little emotional was, "And thank you all for the bread." Yeah. Okay, so another little bit of an update. We are still sprinting on Hermie sprints, but I made it to over halfway. And we just got to the part where they are explaining the Hunger Games, where Haymitch was a part of them. And there are some details that I forgot about and some things that I will definitely be looking out for when we read Sunrise on the Reaping. But reading about what happened and how he won and everything that was going on there, I mean, it's obvious why he drinks. It's obvious why he is the way that he is. And it's just making me worried about having to read Sunrise on the Reaping in a couple of weeks. Because even though he always seems to act indifferent, I feel like he's going to be anything but. But so far, it's been announced what the third quarter quell is going to be. And that's not going to be any fun. So we're just ramping up to that one. A quarter quell is basically every 25 years. They have a special Hunger Games that is an even bigger event than it usually would be. They've basically announced that Katniss is going back. There's no really other way around it, because it's the victors that have to go back, and there's only one female victor from District 12, so that's going to be Katniss. And obviously Peeta is the one who volunteers to go with them. I'm kind of curious to know what would have happened if it would have been Haymitch, but I also know that if Haymitch would go with her, Haymitch would be dead. I mean, there's been a few moments where you just realize how good of a guy Peeta actually is, and how very much in love with Katniss that he still is, even though there's been a whole bunch of ups and downs. I mean, the way that he is at Haymitch's door after about 5 seconds of it being announced that they're going back in, to be sure, like, you need to protect her, that's what we're going to do, she's gonna be kept safe no matter how we slice it, I mean, his whole thing with Rue and their district about giving up a quarter or a monthly stipend that they get for winning the games. There's just, Haymitch tells her, like, you could live 100 years and never deserve that, boy. And at this point, I sadly kind of agree, because his thing with the games from the get-go, from the first Hunger Games, has always been to keep her safe, to make sure that she survives in some kind of way. And he did that to, by, in the first games, go with the careers and keep them off the offered track, or just keep an eye on them and make sure that he could step in when that was needed. And then obviously we knew that his feelings for her were very much a thing. I know there's gonna be a pregnancy announcement here that's gonna be like a bomb to try like a Hail Mary to make sure that maybe, or to try to cancel the Hunger Games. Everything that boy does is to keep her safe. Simple as that. There's also been some things about Gale that have been questionable, in my opinion. We've mentioned the snare thing, which if you know, you know. We've also mentioned, or there was this moment when he kissed her, where I don't know how to feel about that, because she makes it very clear that she never really thought about Gale in that way. So, I don't know, when I read it, I felt a little bit like when Jacob in Twilight kisses Bella. That kind of felt the same. Like, just shock reaction to just see what happens. And the fact that he goes, I just had to do that at least once. I mean, yeah, that's fine that you wanted to do it at least once, but you could have asked. Instead of just, you know, going for it. But that's just me. Or maybe it's not just me, just let me know. The way he gets jealous about the fact that Peeta would have been coming if they would have run off into the woods. What do you think would happen if he stayed behind? Do you think they would spare his life? I don't think they would. I think he would be the first that they would reach out and get out of there, that he would be the first that they would kill or torture or use. If you know, no. Then the fact that he gets annoyed that she would take him, and that it proves that Peeta actually means something to Katniss. I mean, why are you annoyed? He did the same thing that you would want, which is keep her alive, so why are we being annoyed about it? Why are we not grateful for this boy? because you're jealous. I mean, it's clear that they're still teenagers, but if you think ahead a little bit with a fully formed frontal lobe, it seems kind of obvious that instead of being jealous of the man, you should just talk to him and actually say thank you for saving the girl that you say that you love, but are only just kind of being proprietary over. I don't know. Always been Team PETA. Never gonna change. Never gonna be anything different. Also, one other thing that I noticed and that I actually liked about this is that when they tell PETA, when Haymitch and Katniss tell PETA about the visit from President Snow and how everyone's in danger and all that kind of stuff, he actually gets, and don't get me wrong, I don't approve of this, but he actually starts throwing some things around and gets angry. And in my memory, PETA was always the one who was going to talk people down from wanting to rebel and being violent and being anything but actually, or at least that's what came across in the movies. And in this book, it becomes way more obvious. There's even a point where he asks, maybe we should actually, maybe we shouldn't die down the discontent in the districts. Maybe we should have been stirring the fire. And it's like that moment, that is the first moment when he gets angry about the fact that he also has people to protect, when I'm like, oh, right, PETA isn't just the boy with the words. PETA also gets angry, PETA also gets, annoyed, and actually has a fire in him, because in the movies, it's sort of made out to believe that Gale is the one who fights, and PETA is the one who, Gale wants fight and wants war and wants a rebellion, and PETA is the one who wants to solve it peacefully. And it becomes clear that PETA, in this book at least, from where I am now, it becomes clear that PETA knows that to get to peace, there first must be a rebellion. And he knows why. And I don't know, that was just a moment where I'm like, I don't condone violence of any kind. But that was just a moment where I was like, I appreciated it to show that he just isn't, he's not just a man of words. He knows those emotions. He can be over the top, and he's not always as peaceful as they make him out to be. And I don't know, he's not just a boy of words, he does things too, and he's not as opposed to rebellion as I remembered in my head. I have just finished Catching Fire. Safe to say, this one, for me, exceeds the Hunger Games. If you guys can see by the amount of tabs that are on here, I don't think I've ever annotated a book this much. Hi! Or added this many notes in there as I did with this one. And it's sort of obvious because it's a story that really, if you've seen the movie, there's a lot of things that's going on behind the scenes that Katniss can only guess at. And I sort of like reading about how she's putting the perspective together, or the little clues together. In the movie, you see the behind the scenes of what's actually going on and the choices that are being made and how that's actually affecting the arena. But in this one, in this book, you only read about the effects. You don't really read about the reasons behind them. And it's sort of a thing where she says she doesn't want a rebellion, but especially in the beginning, like some of her actions are speaking towards the opposite very clearly. That I think if she wasn't in a highly emotional state, like I don't think if she stepped back, she would see that this isn't really calming anybody down. That first scene about the peacekeepers shooting the old man is, I mean, it's heartbreaking. You immediately know what the consequences are going to be for everyone involved in this rebellion, which is just death. And that's a scary thing to realize and to be a part of. Other than that, I think I'm still unsure. Even with the movie, I'm trying to keep those two separate, but I'm still unsure. The third quarter quell is basically so the victors go back, right? The victors go back inside. Now, I have a strong feeling that President Snow finagled something and he made sure that they went back in there because it would just solve all of his problems. But I'm not 100% sure. Plutarch says that he has nothing to do with it. But I'm highly doubting that fact because in my eyes, he wants the rebellion. They want Katniss to be the face of this rebellion, right? So in my eyes, he wants to stop the Hunger Games and doesn't want any more kids to die. So his best way to ensure that people survive the arena, that there's people in there that he can trust and that want this rebellion as well, is to make sure that there are people that he can talk to regularly, which are the actual victors of Hunger Games. And he did say that he was a part of a rebel organization for years that was trying to overthrow the Capitol. So I don't really believe him when he says that he hasn't had a hand in picking this third quarter quell and that he didn't want her to go back into the arena. Let me know what you think in the comments, but that is just my 2 cents. Also, reading the final chapter, reading everything that's happening, how we all of a sudden see how Finnick, Haymitch have something to do with Plutarch. Reading this for the first time, I remember I was so confused. I had no idea what was going on. I was basically in Katniss's boat, and I remember feeling betrayed as well and not really knowing what the hell was going on. Then you get the PETA is still in the Capitol, and then you get that last line, which if you ever want to guarantee that people are going to keep reading your series, ending the book with Katniss, there is no District 12, is, pun intended, quite the bomb to drop. We know they do this. We know they've done this with District 13. So telling her, and I also don't know, like even President Snow is not really doing his best to keep her under his thumb. Like he's doing everything he can to kind of fuel her rebellious side, if you're asking me. Like PETA ending back up in the Hunger Games, which if he had any inclination, she wants to protect him at all cost. Then using Prim and Gale and everybody with the Jabberjays, just making her remember who she wants to protect. That happens. And then he destroys her home. Like, what do you think she's gonna do? She's just gonna lay down and not do anything? If you've seen how she reacted in the first Hunger Games, you know that if she's put under pressure, she's gonna pick, like, either die together or just FU Capital. Or both. I mean, in this book throughout, she mentioned how she wants to how she's not opposed to using her death as fuel to the fire, which is... PTSD is also very prevalent in this story, which I think is very important. To come back to non-spoilery bits, I think one of the things that is also very prevalent in the story, which I think they did a really good job in the movies with as well, is the portrayal of PTSD in this. I think it's pretty obvious that every single victor of the Hunger Games has some form of PTSD. Even like the other victors, it's highly or widely spoken about the other victors that we get to meet from the Hunger Games, they all had their own way of managing things, and not all were good. I think it's very important to talk about. It's also something that, you know, with a war, soldiers, victims, they're not going to come out unscathed. I think one of the lines that I always remember is, no one ever wins the games. No one ever wins the games. You're never going to be a true victor because you're a victim. That was Catching Fire. Right now in my ranking, it's still going Catching Fire, Hunger Games. Then next week, obviously, we're doing Mockingjay, which I'm very excited about because that's going to round out the first trilogy, the first story arc. And then we're going to go and hop back in time. Okay, so as you guys saw, I started Mockingjay. I'm obviously in my t-shirt, and I just finished chapter 22. I know what happens. I knew it was coming, and I still hate it. Oh, this book really just shows war in all its aspects. It's not afraid to show how gruesome it can be. It's showing the psychological effects, the emotional effects, physical effects, all of it. We get some more PTSD, we get some more like unhealthy coping mechanisms. There was another hint about what's gonna probably happen with Sunrise on the Reaping, and I'm not okay. It was something that I actually forgot about. So yeah, this is the book where you realize that this is not a YA dystopian romance. It's a war story. And it doesn't stop. I am not gonna sit on my high horse and pretend that some of those things aren't happening right now. So I think this book is a lot more difficult to wrap your head around, or to pretend that it couldn't happen in real life, because there's no Hunger Games going on in this one. There's no pretending like, oh, we're not there yet. We're not doing like a game show where we send kids off to die. So we're not that cruel yet, but this is war. And we are this cruel. So it's much more difficult to pretend that it's not happening. And I feel like she did a marvelous job at keeping this for the final book. If she did this in the first one, I don't think it would have packed the same punch. Right now, you know about the people in here, you know about the characters, you care about them, you know about their backgrounds, you know everything that they've already been through. I mean, you have about as much reason to want this whole thing done than they do. But that doesn't mean that the journey to get there isn't riddled in death and destruction and suffering and everything else. Getting into spoilery bits, Gale is still annoying me. He still has this sort of possessive side over Katniss that I don't appreciate. There's more important things going on than your love life, dude. Especially like even when he talks about him realizing that he actually might be in love with her is triggered by jealousy. It's because someone else is hitting on her and he's like, oh, and I minded. And I'm like, so you figured out that you had feelings for her because there was a threat to the fact that she might not be with you for the rest of her life. No. So it was doomed from the get-go. It's also showing that he's much more vengeful and much more aggressive than Peeta is, even than Katniss is at times, especially in District 2. The whole thing about what the Capitol does to Peeta is basic psychological torture mixed in with chemical or biological warfare. I mean, the fact that they used torture to change his memories, to just like condition himself to believe that Katniss is a threat, and to turn him into a weapon and just send him right back off into her arms is evil. It's just plain evil. It's even worse than, in my opinion, having someone who is a spy, turns out to be evil and is there to kill you. It's something so different because it goes with, how do I phrase this? He was never that person. He was never the one who was insanely violent. He was never the one. He was always like, he got the fact that a rebellion was needed. He understood that. But he was never going to be the one who was going to shoot first. And to now be so inherently changed, how he doesn't know what is actually happening, it's just another way for Snow to keep Katniss occupied. And this is the one case where it doesn't really backfire on Snow, but it does, because she's done. She's just done. And I think for her, it would have been better, and she mentions this in the book, for her it would have been better for him to just be the mutt, be evil, and not be fixable. And then the second it turns out that he might be able to get fixed, it just throws everything out of whack for her, and she just doesn't know what to do with him. How Gale responds to that, again, is marvelous. How he's saying, like, now you'll never choose me, because he's always going to be in pain, and he's always going to be on the forefront of your mind. I mean, yeah, sure, they're teenagers, I get it. But I don't get it. Like, this is war, dude. He was tortured. A little bit of sympathy. A little bit of empathy. Maybe not just like, oh gosh darn, now I will never get the girl that I want. Well, I ended on chapter 22, so Finnick's dead. Lovely. I know that moment in the movie is just hits a different way, but it still hits. It just happens. And it doesn't really come crashing down on you for a while, I feel. Because you just don't have the chance, because it's just gonna keep going. And again, that is war. But like, he just got married, he just got the love of his life back, and then it's snuffed out, which is horrible. And then we had our Hunger Games version of Always, which got me. Like, it really got me in this time. I don't know why. I think it's because he's really, like, I know what it's like to battle your own head. And to have to do that in a situation such as this because of something that was done to you. Can confirm this shirt does very well with tear stains. Can hardly notice. So we're done with the first trilogy. As you have probably seen, the end of this book always gets me. I guess because by the end spoilers, they remember everyone that they've lost, and the part where the cat comes back kills me. Where they grieve together kills me. PETA planting primroses kills me. Another show of why, like, it's, hold on, I think she says it at the end. What I need to survive is not Gale's fire, kindled with rage and hatred. I have plenty of fire myself. What I need is a dandelion in the spring, the bright yellow that means rebirth instead of destruction, the promise that life can go on no matter how bad our loss is, that it can be good again, and only PETA can give me that. Yeah. There's another quote that I thought really summed up, I think, the statement that she's trying to make in these books, which is, because something is significantly wrong with a creature that sacrifices its children's lives to settle its differences. And to me, that is sort of what war is. Especially with everything that we're seeing right now in this world. The fact that the way this book or this trilogy starts is because Katniss wants to save her sister, and in the end she's the one person that she can't save. I understand that many people would see this as, then what was the point? The point was that there will never be another Prim. No one will feel the need to save their sister from going into a Hunger Games to then end up losing everything. The fact that she is the ultimate price that Katniss has to pay feels... I mean, I don't know how it feels. It feels wrong on so many levels. But for some reason, when you finish it, it still somehow feels like not a happy ending, because it's not happy, like the way that we're used to, with everyone happy and safe and sound and all of that. But it's one where it's this thing where I feel like this thing from the actual movie. Effie, this one point, tells Katniss, promise me you'll find the life of a victor. And I don't think she means like live loud and big and in affluence. But I think she means that to not just survive, to be happy about the fact that she's still there. I don't think by the end of this, in the epilogue, that we're there yet. I don't think that she... I mean, she's gone through a lot. The fact that she has kids at the end of this with Peeta, to me, is a major component in making me feel like she believes to be safe. And that she has some kind of belief that the future is brighter than where they were. Because one of the things that she keeps going on about is the fact that she would never want children. Especially now winning the Hunger Games, she knows that there is nothing that is going to keep her children safe from going into the Hunger Games. Obviously, the Hunger Games are no more, but it's obvious that that doesn't mean that therefore the world is safe, because the Hunger Games were done, but then there was a war and a rebellion. So the fact that she ends this book having children, being with Peeta, being somewhat at peace, I believe is the happiest ending that we could have gotten. Suzanne does not shy away from showing you that war does not discriminate. It takes everyone. It takes anyone. It doesn't matter if you're on the wrong or the right side. Everyone is gonna lose. And everyone is gonna lose big. Either you're gonna win, you're gonna lose people closest to you, you're gonna lose a part of yourself, a part of your sanity. It's gonna take something from you that is vital. That is gonna be it for the first trilogy of the Hunger Games. By the fact that this video is, even this section is gonna be like an hour long, I don't think it's a surprise that I will say everyone should read these. Everyone. Especially in the world that we live in now, it's basically a cautionary tale. But yeah, I still love these books. I still really, really, really do. I am not gonna think about my ranking at this point, because I did just finish it and I am still quite emotional. So I'm gonna let it just slow down and just collect my thoughts and then see. But I will obviously update you further along in the video how I'm feeling about it. So it's been a while. This is the first time that I did not finish one of the Hunger Games books in the time frame that I was supposed to. It took me a lot longer to finish Songbirds, and let's just say life got in the way. It is finished now, which is good, and I have some thoughts. I think it's widely known that for people who have read all of this series, that this is their least favorite book for some reason. I have a theory about that. I have thoughts about this. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is basically the story of Snow, President Snow, before he became president. I think he's about 18, 19 years old in this. And it's just very strange, I think, for people to read where someone ends up, which is a vile human being who has no sort of notion about humanity and empathy and any of that sort, and then to go back and to read from their perspective is a very strange thing, because Suzanne Collins is really great in this, where you read, these aren't spoilers, by the way, in my opinion, you're reading about his life, and the way I phrased it, I think, during the live shows is, you kind of feel empathy for his circumstances and what is happening around him, but you vehemently disagree with every single choice that he makes. So it's a very difficult place to go into the mind of someone who you perceive as being a bad person, and to kind of read and feel these sort of pangs of empathy, because you're like, no, because we know where you end up, and where you end up is not okay. And during reading this book, you sort of get how he got to that point, and you sort of get into his mindset and how he justifies certain choices that he's making, which is not a fun thing to read about, which is something that while you read it, you're like, no, this is not what a regular human should be deciding, or should be feeling, or should be okay with, or any of that sort. And I think it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, which is why I think a lot of people end this book with feeling like, no, this wasn't it. I didn't like this book. But when you zoom out, it's actually a masterclass of seeing, I mean, I have my theories about his mental state, but to sort of get into the mindset of someone who is, in my opinion, again, my opinion, disagreement is allowed, and please tell me in the comments, but he feels like someone who is ruthless, self-serving, lacks empathy, and every single one of his relationships has a functional element to it. The moment you are not functional anymore, you are dispensable. And that, in my life, is not the kind of person that I want to be around. So getting into that headspace, and you sort of see where he's coming from at certain points, which is odd, but you're also very much not agreeing with the choices that he's making. So it's an interesting point. Excuse my language, but it's kind of a mindfuck to read about him and to get into his head. Suzanne Collins, I think, in my opinion, did an amazing job at making you feel uncomfortable and being like, I see where you're going, and I see how you're getting to the point where we first met you, which is a ruthless president. So throughout this story, throughout this book, I was actually so surprised. I'd forgotten how many little links there are to the original Hunger Games. But we have the Hanging Tree song, we have the Meadow song, we have a lot of the symbolics. There's even the name Katniss is being dropped. There's just a lot of little things, even like certain names. We have the Heavens Bees, we have, obviously we meet Tigress, which I think for a lot of people is a surprise as to who Tigress actually is, which is making me very excited yet terrified to read about, or to read Sunrise on the Reaping, because I wouldn't be surprised for Tigress to also be in there, because you know a little bit about what happens to her. One of the theories that is going around, which is not a spoiler in the slightest, in my opinion, because this is neither confirmed nor denied by Suzanne, Miss Collins, not on first name basis, but is that Lucy Gray, which is obviously the tribute that we focus on, along with President Snow in this book, Lucy Gray might actually be a descent or a relative, like related to Katniss Everdeen. And I can see where people think this, because there's a lot of points. Obviously we have the song, but I mean, all of the things happened in the capital and District 12. So the fact that a song stayed popular is not a surprise to me. The fact that nobody knows about Lucy Gray also doesn't surprise me, because things. And so I don't know. I mean, the only thing that I saw that links it is just the song, in my mind. If you have any other reasons or theories, please let me know. But I think it would be fun though, because having Katniss Everdeen be a descendant from Lucy Gray, spoilers now, there are certain things that I see translate. So obviously Coriolanus, or Snow, or whatever you want to call him, has a big impact on the games. He basically invented or implemented the betting. He is starting to implement the reaping and all of the Hunger Games being mandatory viewing. He mentioned that it's not mandatory yet, but he obviously has that idea. Not to mention the fact that Lucy Gray, or like the whole snake thing with Lucy Gray, snakes are venomous, and one of the main things that Snow does, which we know from the previous Hunger Games books, is he uses poison to get rid of his enemies and people that he just wants to get rid of, and like I mentioned, aren't functional to him anymore. So that I thought was a very interesting link. Obviously Tigress, we can see how she's like, you're not really making the best decisions. So I'm curious to see how that twists and how she kind of, or how he turns against her, basically. The fact that his father is responsible for the Hunger Games. I mean, that whole line is just rotten, apparently. So that's happening. The fact that he mentions that he will marry someone because he hates them, so there can never be love involved. Yeah, that takes a certain kind of person. The fact that they deleted that year of the Hunger Games is interesting. I don't know if that's going to have a little bit of a meaning to it, but yeah. So what is now left is this one, which I have, I'm sure, mentioned 100 times throughout this video, and rereading everything else has solidified my feelings that I am terrified to start this one. I love Haymitch. I know what goes on. Looks like it's gonna be grand old time. So what you can look forward to from the last part of this video is probably a lot of me crying. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Yes, I got a haircut. Anyway, so I've started in Sunrise on the Reaping, and I'm even only 32 pages in, and the amount of callbacks and links that I've already noticed to the main trilogy and even to the Ballad is insane. It got to a point where I was like, do I need to cross-reference everything? Also, I'm wearing my Hunger Games shirt. Just FYI. Figured since we're finishing this off, I would finish this off correctly. I feel like I need like to get all of the books together and just like, I don't know, get up like a board or something and get strings, because there's so many things that are interconnecting. Yeah. So Haymitch just got roped into the Hunger Games. I say roped in because he didn't exactly get his name drawn, which sucks even more. The way that he gets into the Hunger Games is him just basically wanting to protect someone. So that sucks, and that takes it off to a very good, different start. Because of reading the previous books, I am really worried, and I kind of feel like I'm protecting myself from the heartbreak that I'm sure is going to be coming. So, yeah. And I read some more of Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm currently on chapter 8. And we are meeting a lot of the characters that we're meeting or that we know from the first trilogy or like the other books, basically. And it's quite surprising. I didn't think that was gonna happen. It's a nice little burst of excitement every time I read a name that I actually know. It does make me feel like we need to get the detective board out and just like pull all the strings, but I'm just gonna let it happen for now. It's already gotten sad quite a few times. I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, I know a lot of the things that are going to happen, and I'm not looking forward to that. But a lot of things happened that surprised me that I didn't know, that are still very sad. I want to read this book, but I also don't want to read this book because I know I'm gonna be sad. I know I'm gonna cry. And I know that I'm meeting characters that are inevitably gonna die, because we are still following a Hunger Games. We are still following tributes that obviously did not win. So, also one thing that I want to mention, which I think is a tribute to how well Suzanne Collins is as a writer, which is that we've had 3 different stories in the same world, right? And 3 different main characters throughout those stories. And it's really interesting, the fact that I guess it's the same with people who write multiple POVs, but I don't really feel that as much as I do in here, which is that every main character has a very different voice, which is obvious. I mean, like with Katniss, I'm guessing it's obvious because it is first person and you get into the psyche of the person that you're reading about. And with Katniss, it was kind of like, what the hell is happening? And you were just kind of going on this journey with her. And then with Snow, his psyche is very different, and he functions, or he makes connections on how you can be functional to him. And he thinks very matter-of-factly and kind of coldly about the world and everyone in that world. And then now you have Haymitch, which is actually reading as a person who is surprisingly romantic, which I didn't expect. And is also sad because when you meet Haymitch in the Hunger Games, he's anything but romantic, and he's kind of lost that part of himself. I'm curious to see, I hope we get a little bit of a glimpse into how he is after the whole Katniss arc, and sort of see how he's doing there. We obviously know how Katniss ends up and how she lives her life. But it would be nice to figure out how he's doing, because we don't really know other than the fact that he's around. It might be interesting to kind of have Katniss's Hunger Games from his perspective and how his psyche was doing that. Why he was so focused on actually keeping Katniss alive. But there's only one way to get my answer, which is to keep reading. Snow is gonna make this girl that looks like Luella join the Hunger Games because they can't, how do you say it? They can't justify the fact that she won't be there because it wasn't aired that she died. So they basically made a second Luella, like with plastic surgery and stuff. That's so gross. So besides the fact that there's double the amount of tributes, this is already the deadliest Hunger Games. Because there's already 2 people dead. And now, I'm just guessing here, there's a third one that's being added onto it. I made it to part 3 of Sunrise on the Reaping, and I think I'm gonna call that a night. I feel like if I start the next chunk, then I'm just gonna want to finish it. I do value my sleep, and I know that when I finish this, I'm not gonna be able to go to sleep anytime soon. There's a lot happening. It's becoming clear to me that Haymitch walked so Katniss could run. And that was unexpected. Again, like, Suzanne doesn't really shy away from horrendous things. And if you've read this book, then you know that by the end of part 2, we lose a tribute in a horrid fashion. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we focused on 2 tributes that are quite young. She has mentioned it multiple times, or it's been mentioned multiple times. Their ages, how young they are, how innocent. And those are the 2 deaths that we see or read about in the arena, and that's not a coincidence. If I have picked up on any of Suzanne Collins's writing, none of it is a coincidence. I mentioned before, we know what happens in Haymitch's Hunger Games, but what we know about his Hunger Games is what we've seen from recordings from the Capitol. So I'm waiting for certain things to happen, and they haven't happened yet. It's obvious that they tampered with the tapes, the same way that no one knows what happened to a certain Lucy Gray. The fact that the last person we lost has a connection to someone we know makes it all the worse. It's just sad, man. I haven't full on cried, I have teared up. But when you sit and think about it, I'm sure this has come up in this vlog, but this isn't fun to read about. So many things still need to happen, and we only have about 130 pages left to do all of them. Okay, so it's the next day, and I have about 50 pages left. The Hunger Games are done, for now, for this year, at least. I was thinking about this yesterday, and I realized, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I mentioned it to Hermie because I voice messaged them because I know that they finished it, so I needed someone to share my thoughts with. So I realized that a lot of the things that I'm reading in this version of the games were not in the book that we've read. And then I realized that the way that Haymitch ends up in the games is manipulated, right? His name is basically not drawn in the reaping. Something else happens that forces him to be in the games. And that sort of sets this example of, well, they're just going to fake whatever they need to make the Capitol believe in this Hunger Games and this really nice little competition they've got going on. So I was thinking about this and I was like, well, why was I such a dum-dum to believe that the version that Peeta and Katniss saw, which was ownership of the Capitol, how could I have believed that what they saw there was completely true and was all of it? Haymitch and Katniss aren't all that different. Let's leave it at that. I think their motives are different. I think how it happened is different, but the end result is there. And it also makes me realize a little bit more why Haymitch was more focused on keeping Katniss alive and making sure that she was okay. Because I think he saw in her a second chance at what his plans were. Okay, so I had a little bit of a time to think about it. And I think the fact that I knew what was going to happen in this book kind of worked to its detriment, because I kept waiting for all the bad stuff to happen. Which doesn't really take away from the fact that Suzanne had a very clear message to send with this book. She actually starts this whole book with 3 quotes. This isn't a spoiler, by the way. Where she talks all about propaganda and the media lying to you and feeding you whatever lies they need to sell their own agenda. And that is definitely what comes across in this book. And for that to be clear and to be able to actually know, you have to read all of the Hunger Games that Haymitch went through. This is basically the book that, or what would have happened to Katniss and to Peeta if they didn't have the whole rebellion behind them. Because the spark is here already. There's already like little things that are happening. It's just that they needed, like the end he says, someone smarter or someone who's just a bit more lucky than he was to actually blow it all up and to end it all. But that doesn't mean that he didn't. He tried and he failed. Final thoughts on Sunrise. I was really thinking that this book was going to break me. It didn't. It does leave me with like a heavy feeling in the pit of my stomach, because it makes it once again abundantly clear that there are no victors in the games and no one wins. And even like, especially with the epilogue, you realize that even if the war is won, it doesn't mean that everyone just goes off and lives happily ever after. There were points in this where I found that it was dragging on a little bit, especially during the whole games itself. It took a while, but I get why we needed all of the details from the games, because Suzanne's whole message in this book is do not believe everything that the media and the government is feeding you, because unless you've lived through it yourself, you do not know what is true. And so we needed the whole scope of the games to then even put it next to what we learn in book 2 of Catching Fire of Hamish's Hunger Games, and be like, but that's not, like I mentioned in a clip before this, like that's not what we know. This isn't what happened. Like this isn't what we have been told. And it's embarrassing that it took me this long to realize that they might have messed with the tape that they watched in the second book, because they don't want any sparks to fire up a rebellion. They don't want them to see, the capital citizens to see, that someone might be disagreeing with how everything is going, especially no one to undermine Snow, Lord forbid, that who the media and who's the capital have portrayed Haymitch to be, which is just a drunk victor who has let himself go ever since he won, becomes someone who, I mean, we caught on by the end of the Hunger Games that he's basically just a broken man who's been traumatized beyond belief and escapes in drink to kind of dull everything and make sure that he doesn't have to be present. So, and when you read this, it's definitely, like, it makes me want to reread the trilogy, if I'm being completely honest, to see if I can catch on to little bits. So that's it. Just like that, we're done. It took us a week longer than I thought it would, but anyway, here we are. This has taken over my life for a little bit, with reading the books, making this vlog, like watching the movies, everything. But I've had so much fun. It's been a joy to see everyone kind of going through this roller coaster of emotions, either by rereading it or by reading it for the first time. And I've loved being a part of it, so thank you, Hermie, for organizing this. We have to give credit where credit is due. Suzanne Collins is an amazing writer. Writing Sunrise on the Reaping with all of the cameos and all of the different storylines that she's already written, to have them all interconnect and make sense and not drop the ball on any of the actual information that we already have, especially with not just like people from the trilogy that are coming into the books just 25 years earlier, and then also having the actual like capital Hunger Games that we know about from Haymitch's year, and then the actual games, to make sure that those make sense and interweave, is quite some craftsmanship. She obviously has a different message with every single one of these books, and I think one of the main ones is that nobody wins in a war. There's always going to be loss. There's always going to be a piece of yourself that you're losing, but in the end, it's going to be worth it, because everyone will be free to make their own choices. And I think one of the other things is what we see in Katniss in the first trilogy is that she cannot just stand by and see something evil happen. She always kind of goes in there. She shows them that she disagrees. It just shows you that always speaking up about unfairness pays off. It might not pay off immediately, because we see that this rebellion takes 25 years to amp up and to actually explode into something that makes a difference, but you never know what those little moments could do and could inspire in people, so keep doing that. Final ranking of these books. I think, to be quite honest with you, what most surprised me was the fact that I actually have a very different view of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes this time around. I was one of those people who didn't really enjoy that book the first time I read it, but now being, I think, maybe a bit older and maybe seeing the world differently, and maybe even having read more books, I don't know, that was a bit different to me. I mean, I would say Hunger Games would be first, but that's just because it kicks everything off. Actually, I think it has to be one of these two as number one. I mean, this movie is still my favorite one. Catching Fire is still my favorite movie. That's, I don't think, is ever going to change. But the way this wraps up is crazy. I think it's going to go... this way, actually, the way that it's been on my bookshelf. I think Mockingjay is my favorite. Then Catching Fire second. Hunger Games third. And I don't actually know about Sunrise and Ballad. I think it's gonna have to go Sunrise and then Ballad. The reason for that being is that I like the fact that you see the hints of everything in this. Sorry if you can hear my cat eating in the background. But I think, yeah, I enjoy the little, like the sparks that you get to see in this book. I enjoy very much. I enjoy the cameos that we get. I don't really enjoy reading about Hamish's pain. I think the reason why this is above Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is because once you read this, the trilogy is never going to read the same. And that means that it needs to be higher up because it actually influences the way you see everything else. So for that reason, this is going to be fourth and Ballad is going to be last. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean that any of these books are bad. Like the fact that Ballad is at the end, like I mentioned, I actually really did enjoy that book this time around, and it was a lot better than I remembered or than I let myself believe that it was. So that is the end. I've been uploading this footage as I was going along, and I think I ended, even before all of these clips, to about 1 hour and 40 minutes. So this is going to be a beast to edit and for you to watch. So if you did make it up until this end, I commend you. Thank you for sticking with me and to watching me dissolve into this madness. I really enjoyed doing this. It's something that I didn't know if it was going to work, if I was going to be able to keep going, just if I was going to be able to do it, frankly. And I love doing it. I enjoyed it. I am willing to do it again, but I just need the right series for it. I don't think, I know there's a Throne of Glass read-along that Donna, Hermie, and myself are doing next year, but that's 7 or 8 books. These were 5, and I'm already gonna be pretty close to 2 hours of footage. I do not want to put you through that, and frankly, I don't want to put myself through that. So we'll see how we do that one. If there is a series that you would like me to do this for, that you think might be fun for me, whether I've read it or not, obviously it doesn't matter because I've reread the first 4 books out of the 5 of this series, just let me know and I'll consider it. I won't be doing one of these every month, but I might maybe it would be fun to do 2 of these, 3 of these every year. But I think I'm gonna need a little while to recover from this one. Thank you, Hermie, for doing this. I had a grand old time. I enjoyed myself, even though I cried a lot during reading these books. It's just solidified the fact that these are amazing books in my mind. The movies are insane. I'm looking forward to the new one. I can now actually start looking up all of the casting because I haven't been doing that because I didn't want it to influence my reading. Yeah, if you've made it to this point, just put a little bird emoji in the comments. And just thank you for going on this ride with me. If you've joined in Hermie's Hunger Games, I hope you had an amazing time. If you didn't, feel free to use this vlog to do a little bit of a read along yourself and just skip to the parts when you finish a certain book. I hope I did all of the spoiler tags in the correct way. If I didn't, I really do apologize because I hate spoiling things. Ending this after being with this for over a month is very strange, but I'm gonna have to. So I can actually end up editing and uploading this vlog for you guys to watch. So, hope you enjoyed your snacks, and I will see you all in a new video next week. Bye.